The candlelight flickered, blurring the edges of faces around the table. Laughter echoed, a bright, brittle sound that suddenly felt miles away. 30 fucking 9. My friends, bless their oblivious hearts, raised their glasses, toasting another year of my life. My phone buzzed. Natalie? My blood ran cold. I knew, somehow, that this wasn't going to be a happy birthday message. I unlocked the screen, my thumb trembling slightly. The words burned into my retinas. Hey Chris, I just wanted to be upfront with you. I found someone better. Someone younger, hotter, and honestly an upgrade. I transferred our money into my personal account. Felt fair since I was the one making most of it anyway. No hard feelings. Enjoy your birthday. The air whooshed out of my lungs. I couldn't breathe. Upgrade? Upgrade? The audacity. The sheer soul-crushing cruelty of it. It was like a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air in a room suddenly devoid of oxygen. I stared at the message, the emojis mocking me, the words themselves screaming betrayal. Everyone was still laughing, still talking, still celebrating, while my world shattered into a million pieces. How could they not see it? How could they not feel the seismic shift happening inside me? No shaking hands, no sudden gasp, no tears welling in my eyes. Not yet. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, forcing myself to maintain composure. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. I typed back one word, congrats, simple, quiet, lethal, because Natalie, in her blinding arrogance, hadn't considered one crucial thing. I'd been watching. I'd been waiting. Natalie had always been arrogant, sure. That was part of the initial attraction, the magnetic pull of her confidence. She could charm the skin off a snake, make you believe anything was her idea, even when it wasn't. But the arrogance had mutated, festered into something poisonous. The late nights at work that stretched later and later, even though her company never required overtime. The phone always faced down on the table, vibrating with secrets. The dismissive roll of her eyes when I mentioned our future, as if I were a fool for even dreaming of one. The money! That was where the cracks really started to show. Small things at first. Delayed Venmo payments. A sudden obsession with splitting expenses when she used to happily pick up the tab. Then, the big one. Last month, she'd suggested moving our shared savings into an account solely in her name. It's just easier that way, she'd said, waving her hand dismissively. I'm better with money, babe. I'll make sure we're set. I'd smiled, nodded, let her believe she'd convinced me. Inside, a cold fury had begun to simmer. I walked straight to my bank that afternoon. I didn't drain the joint account completely. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I started a slow, methodical bleed. Small withdrawals, spaced out just enough that she wouldn't notice. I funneled my portion into the new account, leaving enough behind to maintain the facade. I had a strange sense of comfort in what I was doing, not because I had a plan, but because I was no longer blind to the future. And now, on my birthday, the trap had sprung. Natalie thought she'd won. She thought she'd taken everything, leaving me with nothing but a broken heart and an empty wallet. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. An hour after her text, another buzz. Chris, a message from Sarah, a mutual friend. My heart sank. Chris, I don't know how to say this, but Natalie just hard launched her new boyfriend on Instagram. She literally posted, "The glow up is real. Out with the old, in with the new." Sarah's righteous fury burned through the text. I clicked the link, my stomach churning. There she was, posing in a luxury hotel suite, arm draped possessively around some kid. Mark. The same Mark she'd sworn was just a friend. The same Mark she'd dismissed as annoying and immature. He couldn't have been older than 22, all sculpted cheekbones and perfect hair, the kind of vacant beauty that made people stop and stare. And Natalie, smirking, triumphant, like she'd won the lottery. The comments were a flurry of validation. Okay, queen. Big upgrade. Damn, girl upgraded from economy to first class. Rip to the ex. He must be crying. Crying? They thought I was crying? I wasn't crying. I was waiting. Natalie believed she'd outsmarted me. She assumed I'd do what every other sap in her life had done: break down, beg for closure, spiral into self-pity. But the thing about arrogant women is they always underestimate the men they betray. They become blinded by the confidence they have in their own plan. She'd forgotten whose name was on the lease. She'd forgotten whose credit card she'd been happily swiping for the last 6 months. She'd forgotten that I had built our savings while she just shopped and spent. I stared at my phone, at the texts, the photos, the gloating comments, and a slow, predatory smile spread across my face. Natalie had made the first move, but I was about to make the last one. She had all the hubris of a general leading his army, only to realize it was one man with a knife. Natalie believed she had taken the money, the power, the upper hand. What she'd really done was set herself up for a fall so spectacular, so humiliating, she wouldn't see it coming until she was flat on her face. The first domino would tip over in 3, 2, 1. The first thing I did when I got home was change the locks. A small, simple act that felt incredibly powerful. Natalie had never bothered putting her name on the lease. Babe, why do all that paperwork? You're way better at that stuff than I am, she'd purred when we moved in. Now her laziness would cost her dearly. The landlord predictably didn't bat an eye. You're the only one on the lease, Chris. You can do whatever you want. By midnight, Natalie no longer had a home to come back to. At 1:00 a.m., my phone buzzed. The first sign that reality was beginning to sink in. Hey, super weird, but I think my key isn't working. Can you let me in? I let the message sit. Read, but unanswered. 15 minutes later, Chris. What's going on? I need to grab some of my stuff. Still silence. Because Natalie's stuff, the designer dresses, the overpriced jewelry, the shoes she treated like disposable toys, was already packed in garbage bags, sitting in the hallway outside. When she tried to enter her old life, she would find herself standing on the curb, staring at her belongings like a stranger. But this was just the appetizer. At 8 a.m. the next morning, I made the call. Hi, I need to report fraudulent activity on my joint account. The customer service rep's voice was polite, professional. What kind of fraudulent activity, sir? I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Money was withdrawn without my permission. And I have text message proof that my ex took the funds maliciously. A pause. Would you be able to forward those messages to our fraud department? Of course. Happy to. I sent the screenshots within minutes. By 9:30 a.m., Natalie's personal bank account, the one she'd so proudly deposited our stolen money into, was frozen, pending an investigation. The next text from Natalie came right on schedule. Chris, WTF did you do? My bank account is locked. I can't access anything. I sipped my morning coffee, a smug satisfaction bubbling in my chest. Weird. Maybe you should call your bank. God, I imagined the phone call she made. I can just imagine what went through her head when the bank employee mentioned fraud. I imagine the slow, agonizing realization washing over her. Her grand upgrade wasn't going as planned. Her luxury vacation with Mark had just crashed and burned, and I was not the fool she thought I was. Natalie had booked a rental car for her trip with Mark. A flashy convertible, of course. I knew this because I'd seen the confirmation email pop up on our shared iPad weeks ago. And guess what credit card she'd used? Mine. She'd stupidly left the card details saved in the system, thinking I wouldn't notice. So, at 10:00 a.m., I made my second phone call of the day. Hi, I need to report an unauthorized transaction on my credit card. By noon, the rental car was canceled. Just like that, Natalie and Mark had no ride to their supposed better life. At exactly 12:17 p.m., my phone rang. Natalie! I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. Then another. By the fifth attempt, I finally picked up. Chris, you need to fix this. My bank is frozen. My rental is canceled. My stuff is in trash bags outside the apartment. You've made your point, okay? I smiled, twirling my coffee spoon between my fingers. Oh, Natalie. I haven't even started. Natalie was unraveling. I could hear it in her voice, see it in her desperate texts, feel it in the frantic energy crackling through the phone line. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. What's the point of revenge if the person who betrayed you doesn't fully understand the depth of their mistake? I was going to make sure Natalie felt every single consequence she had brought upon herself. And the best part? She still had no idea just how deep the trap had been set. Natalie's next brilliant move had been booking a high-end hotel suite for herself and Mark. 5-star luxury, ocean views, private balcony. A fantasy trip meant to be the cherry on top of her upgrade. Too bad she didn't pay attention to the fine print. When she transferred all our money into her personal account, and that account got frozen for fraud, the pending hotel charges bounced. At exactly 3:00 p.m., Natalie and Mark arrived at the hotel, dressed for a vacation they could no longer afford. I wish I could have seen her face when the receptionist politely informed her, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your payment was declined, and unfortunately we've had to release your reservation." Mark must have been thrilled. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I already knew who it was. I answered, keeping my voice light. "Hello?" A second of silence. Then, not Natalie, but Mark, his voice tight with barely contained rage. "Chris? Hey, look, I know things are weird between us, but..." I didn't let him finish. "Mark? How's that upgrade treating you?" Silence. Then, a sharp intake of breath through his nose. I just need to know if there's something we can do to fix this." "Natalie said you froze her account." I laughed. "Natalie said that, did she? And did she also mention how she stole money that wasn't hers? Or how she left me on my birthday like an absolute coward?" Mark exhaled sharply. "Look, I didn't know any of that, okay? I just thought..." I cut him off again. "You just thought she was an innocent, misunderstood girl who needed saving. Let me guess. She told you I was cold, controlling, that I didn't support her dreams?" The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Mark was finally realizing he'd been played too. Too little, too late. While Natalie was scrambling to figure out how to pay for a hotel she couldn't afford, the internet was having a field day. Natalie, being the overconfident social media addict that she was, had posted about her new life way too soon. And people noticed. The comments were relentless. "Damn, girl flexed too early. LOL. Imagine leaving your man for an upgrade just to go broke in 24 hours. Nah. Karma came with express delivery on this one. Even people who didn't know me personally were tearing her apart. And then it happened. The moment I'd been waiting for. Her boss saw it. At 4:45 p.m., my phone vibrated again. "Natalie!" I picked up this time, just to hear her sweat. "Chris, you need to stop this." She started immediately, her voice low, controlled, like she was trying to sound calm but failing miserably. I smiled. "Stop what, Natalie? You know exactly what. My boss called me today." I feigned surprise. "Oh? And why would she do that?" Natalie let out a bitter laugh. "Because apparently some people at work saw my Instagram post and now HR is involved." That's right. Her company had a strict non-fraternization policy. And Natalie had been dating a subordinate. Mark wasn't just some random guy. He was a junior staff member at her firm. And now, corporate had questions. Natalie thought she was calling to scare me into backing off. She still didn't understand how completely she'd already lost. So I decided to spell it out for her. "Natalie, let me get something straight. I didn't do anything to you. You did this to yourself. You stole our money. You played yourself. You lost control the moment you underestimated me. Her breathing sharpened. I swear to God, Chris. No, Natalie, you don't swear to God. You swear to yourself that next time, you won't be so stupid. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans. Enjoy your better life, if you can still afford it. And with that, I hung up. Her calls kept coming. I never answered. Natalie was losing control. Everything she had so confidently seized for herself was slipping through her fingers like sand. No money, no hotel, no car, no apartment, and now, no job security either. But Natalie, she wasn't the type to go down quietly. No, she was the kind of woman who would set herself on fire just to feel like she was still in control. Which meant, the next thing she did was the dumbest move of all. At 9:00 a.m. the next morning, I woke up to a knock at my door. Not a text, not a call. A knock. I peeked through the peephole. A police officer. My gut clenched. What now? I opened the door, keeping my expression carefully neutral. Chris Walker? Yes, that's me. Is there a problem? We received a report about stolen property. Your ex-girlfriend, Natalie Carter, claims that you've unlawfully kept items that belonged to her. I almost laughed out loud. Did she now? She specifically mentioned some designer bags, a laptop, and a few dresses. I stepped aside, gesturing to the hallway where Natalie's garbage-bagged belongings still sat. Everything she left behind is right there, untouched. She's welcome to take it, if she actually comes to get it herself. The officer glanced at the bags. So, you haven't prevented her from accessing her property? Nope. But I have prevented her from accessing my apartment, my money, and my life. Is that a crime? The officer smirked. Not at all, sir. Sounds like a civil matter, not a criminal one. We'll be closing this complaint. And just like that, Natalie's pathetic attempt to intimidate me through law enforcement failed. Strike one. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed again. A call from a familiar number. Mark. I considered ignoring it. But curiosity won. Hello? I answered, keeping my tone light. Chris, I need to know the truth. Mark's voice came through, tight with frustration. How much of this did you plan? Plan? I repeated, feigning confusion. What exactly are you accusing me of, Mark? Oh, don't play dumb. Natalie's broke. Her job is on the line. Her accounts are frozen. And now she's crashing at my place like some homeless sorority girl. This isn't just bad luck. You did something. I smiled, swirling my coffee. Mark, let me ask you something. Did Natalie ever tell you why she and I shared the bank account? Silence. Did she ever mention whose name is on the apartment lease? Or how she's been living off my credit cards for months? More silence. Then, softly, almost bitterly, no. She said you owed her that money, that you were controlling, that you'd never let her have any independence. I let out a short laugh. So, she convinced you that stealing from me was just her taking back control? Classic. Mark exhaled sharply. God, I was such an idiot. I didn't argue, because, yeah, he kind of was. The final nail in Natalie's coffin came 3 days later. Her company officially fired her. Not just because of the workplace relationship scandal, though that was bad enough, but because HR had reviewed her expense reports. Turns out, Natalie had been reimbursing herself for fake business dinners. She'd even expensed hotel stays, ones that I hadn't even discovered yet. Her arrogance wasn't just personal. It was professional suicide. And now Natalie was truly left with nothing. The very last time Natalie ever contacted me was 1 week later. Her name popped up on my screen. Instead of rejecting it, I answered. I wanted to hear it. Chris? She started, her voice hollow. You win. I didn't say anything. I let the words hang between us. Natalie sighed. I don't get it. You didn't even try to get back at me. You didn't scream. You didn't fight. You just let everything collapse around me. I took a deep breath, then finally answered, Natalie, you did all of this to yourself. I didn't have to fight you. I just had to watch you destroy yourself. Silence. Then, quietly, I messed up. I smiled. Yeah, you did. And then I hung up. I blocked her number. And I never looked back. Natalie was gone. Blocked. Erased. A ghost in my past. And yet, the ripples of her destruction were still spreading. Not that I cared. I'd already moved on. But Natalie was learning the hard way that when you build your life on lies and arrogance, there's nothing left when it all crumbles. It didn't take long for word to spread about Natalie's downfall. Her old friends? They turned on her faster than she could say upgrade. Her coworkers? They'd already seen the warning signs. And her family? Well, that's where things got really interesting. One afternoon, I got a text from an unexpected number. It was Natalie's mother, Laura. I hesitated before opening it, my stomach knotting. What did she want? Chris, I know you don't owe me anything, but can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment, my mind racing. Was she about to blame me for her daughter's life falling apart? I typed back, depends. Are you about to blame me for your daughter's life falling apart? Her reply came instantly. No. I need to know the truth. She won't tell me anything, and all I hear are pieces of the story from other people. That was interesting. If her own mother wasn't defending her anymore, it meant Natalie's charm had officially run out. I agreed to meet her for coffee. Not because I cared about Natalie, but because I wanted to see how much damage she had done to herself. When I walked into the cafe, Laura looked exhausted, like she had aged 5 years in just a few weeks. Thank you for meeting me, she said, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. I need to understand how this happened. I shrugged. Your daughter overplayed her hand. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she was smarter than me. Laura sighed. She told us you were controlling, that you tried to ruin her. I laughed, shaking my head. Tell me, Laura, what does controlling mean to Natalie? Because as far as I can tell, it means not letting her get away with everything she wants. She didn't argue. In fact, she looked guilty. We spoiled her, she admitted. We always bailed her out when she screwed up. Her dad and I thought we were helping, but I see now that we just enabled her to believe she'd never face real consequences. I took a sip of my coffee, letting her words settle. Then, she asked the real question. Chris, is there any way back for her? I thought about it. Then, I said the only thing I knew to be true. Not until she realizes that she is the problem. And by the look on her face, I knew she already understood the answer. I heard bits and pieces over the next few months. Natalie moved back in with her parents. Apparently, they gave her conditions this time. No free money, no reckless spending, and definitely no more boyfriends using her as a stepping stone. Which was ironic, because Mark had dumped her a week after our last conversation. Guess being the upgrade wasn't as fun when the money ran out. While Natalie was stuck rebuilding her life from scratch, I was thriving. I got a promotion. I traveled. I started a business on the side. And for the first time in years, I felt completely free. No more waiting for someone to grow up. No more walking on eggshells. No more playing a game where the only way to win was to leave the table entirely. One day, nearly a year later, I got a message request on social media. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the name Natalie. Curiosity got the best of me. I clicked! Chris. Hey, I know it's been a long time. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I screwed up. I should have treated you better. I don't expect anything, but I wanted you to know that. I stared at the message for a long moment, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Pity, contempt, a flicker of something that almost felt like sadness. Then I deleted it, unanswered. Because some apologies, they come far too late. Natalie was nothing but a distant memory now. A lesson, a cautionary tale, a reminder of everything I would never tolerate again. while she was still trying to crawl her way out of the hole she dug for herself. My life was only getting better. And the best part? I didn't just survive her betrayal. I thrived because of it. A year had passed since that awful birthday, since the laughable text message where Natalie declared she was upgrading her life at my expense. And yet, when I looked at where we both ended up, it was clear who had really won. This was my reality now. My career had skyrocketed. That side business I started? It took off. Turns out, when you remove a financial leech from your life, your bank account thrives. I found love again. A real, mature, respectful relationship. Someone who didn't need to tear me down just to feel powerful. Someone who was successful in her own right and didn't feel the need to put anyone else down. I traveled the world. While Natalie was stuck in her parents' basement, I was exploring new cities, trying new foods, and finally, living for myself. I didn't need revenge because my success spoke for itself. But life has a funny way of wrapping up loose ends. It happened at a mutual friend's wedding. I almost didn't go, but something told me this was going to be worth it. And I was right, because the moment I walked in, I saw her. Natalie, slumped at a table in the corner, nursing a cheap wine. Looking nothing like the woman who once thought she was too good for me. Her once carefully styled hair unkempt. Her expensive dresses now replaced by an ill-fitting cocktail dress. Her signature confidence gone, replaced with a haunted emptiness. I almost felt bad for her. Almost! Until our eyes met. And I saw it. Regret. The kind of regret that settles deep in your bones when you realize you traded gold for tinfoil. The kind of regret you can't undo, no matter how hard you try. I gave her a small, polite smile. Then I turned back to my date. The beautiful, successful woman sitting beside me, the one who actually respected me, and I let Natalie watch me move on. Later that night, she finally gathered the nerve to approach me. I saw her coming, but I pretended not to notice, until she cleared her throat. Chris? Hey! I turned, giving her a polite, disinterested glance. Natalie. She shifted awkwardly. You look good. I smirked. I know, her lips pressed into a thin line. I guess you heard about everything. My job. Mark. All of it. I nodded. Yep. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Guess you're pretty happy about how things turned out. I tilted my head, considering my answer. Then, I said, no, Natalie. I don't think about you enough to be happy or unhappy about it. And that was the truth. Her face fell. I am sorry, Chris. For everything. I wish I could take it back. I sighed, swirling the champagne in my glass. You don't get it, do you? She frowned. Get what? I smiled. I don't need your apology. I never did. Because the second you walked away, you set me free. And now, I gestured to the beautiful life I had built. I have everything I ever wanted. And you. I let my gaze flicker over her worn-down appearance. Well, you have exactly what you deserve. Her jaw clenched. But she had nothing left to say. Because deep down, she knew I was right. As I walked away, I felt lighter than I ever had before. Natalie had been a part of my life once. But that's all she would ever be, a past mistake, a lesson learned. And the most ironic part? She once thought that leaving me would be her greatest success. But in reality, it was mine, because I had won the only battle that ever mattered, the battle to live well, love better, and never settle for less again. The afterglow of the wedding lingered for days. Not because of the stale champagne or the awkward forced smile photos, but because of her, the ghost of upgrade past. Seeing Natalie like that, diminished, regretful, should have been the ultimate closure. A clean break. A final victory. But it wasn't. Instead, it was a dull ache, a low hum of, what? Pity? Maybe? Disgust? Definitely. But also a faint echo of something I couldn't quite name. A recognition of the shared history we'd once had, now twisted and irrevocably broken. I tried to shake it off. Focused on Lena, the woman who'd been my date that night, and who was, in every conceivable way, the anti-Natalie. She was kind, intelligent, grounded. She challenged me, supported me, and, most importantly, she saw me, not some caricature of who she wanted me to be. Lena knew about Natalie, of course. I hadn't hidden anything. Honesty had been the bedrock of our relationship from the start. She'd listened patiently as I recounted the betrayal, the fallout, the slow, methodical dismantling of Natalie's carefully constructed facade. She'd offered sympathy, yes, but also a quiet understanding that went deeper than mere words. "She doesn't define you, Chris," Lena had said one night, tracing the lines of my jaw with her fingertips. "She's a footnote in your story. A painful one, sure, but still, just a footnote." I wanted to believe her. I tried to believe her, but Natalie had a way of clinging, of insinuating herself into my thoughts like a persistent virus. The business was booming. I'd landed a major new client, one that would catapult my small consulting firm into the big leagues. The pressure was immense, exhilarating, terrifying. I found myself working late nights, pouring every ounce of my energy into the project. Lena understood, even when it meant postponed dates and missed phone calls. She'd leave me encouraging notes, bring me coffee at the office, a silent, steady presence in the chaos. One evening, buried under spreadsheets and market analyses, my phone pinged. "Unknown number." I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello?" I said, my voice weary. A hesitant pause. Then a familiar voice. "Chris? It's Laura." Natalie's mother. My blood ran cold. I hadn't spoken to Laura since that awkward coffee months ago. "Laura," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "What can I do for you?" I know this is a lot to ask," Laura said, her voice trembling slightly. "But Natalie's been trying to find a job, and it's been difficult. Her reputation." I cut her off. "Laura, I appreciate you reaching out, but I don't see how this concerns me." I know, Laura said quickly. "But she's trying to turn things around, Chris. She's really trying. And she asked me if I thought you might know of any opportunities." My jaw tightened. "Laura, I'm not going to help her. She made her choices. She has to live with the consequences." "I understand," Laura said softly. I had to try." "Thank you for listening, Chris." She hung up. I stared at my phone, a knot forming in my stomach. Part of me felt vindicated, justified in my refusal. Natalie had reaped what she sowed. Why should I lift a finger to help her now? But another part of me, a small, nagging voice, whispered that maybe, just maybe, everyone deserved a second chance. Maybe even Natalie. I pushed the thought away. I had a business to run, a relationship to nurture, a life to build. Natalie was not my responsibility. The project was a success, a resounding, undeniable success. My firm was flooded with new inquiries, new opportunities. I was finally living the life I'd always dreamed of, the life Natalie had scoffed at, the life she thought she could steal from me. Lena celebrated with me, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Chris," she said, wrapping her arms around me. "You really did it." But even in the midst of the celebration, a small part of me felt empty. The triumph felt hollow, somehow. I started volunteering at a local community center, mentoring young entrepreneurs. I realized I enjoyed helping others avoid the pitfalls I'd stumbled into. One evening, while reviewing business plans, I saw a familiar name on one of the applications, Mark Jenkins. My heart skipped a beat. The Mark? Natalie's upgrade? I clicked on his profile. He was starting a small landscaping business, struggling to secure funding. His application was earnest, well-researched, but lacked the polish and experience of the other candidates. I should have rejected it. I should have thrown it in the trash and forgotten about it. But something held me back. I called him in for an interview. Mark was nervous, awkward, clearly intimidated by me. He stammered through his pitch, avoiding eye contact. He looked nothing like the smug, confident kid I'd seen in those Instagram photos with Natalie. I asked him tough questions, probing his knowledge, his experience, his commitment. He answered honestly, humbly, admitting his mistakes. He knew about Natalie, of course. I didn't bring it up, but I could see it in his eyes, the lingering shame, the weight of his past. At the end of the interview, I made a decision. "Mark," I said, leaning forward, "I'm going to give you a chance. Not because of anything that happened in the past, but because I see potential in you. But let me be clear, this is a loan, not a handout. I expect you to work hard, to learn from your mistakes, and to prove to me that you deserve this opportunity." Mark's eyes widened. "Mr. Walker, I don't know what to say." "Thank you. I won't let you down." I nodded. "Good. Because if you do, you'll be answering to me." As Mark left the office, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. What had I just done? Was I crazy? Was I trying to atone for something that wasn't my fault? Lena, as always, offered a different perspective. "Maybe you're just trying to pay it forward, Chris," she said, smiling gently. "Maybe you're just trying to make the world a little bit better, one small business at a time." Maybe she was right. Months passed. Mark's business started to thrive. He was diligent, hardworking, and surprisingly talented. He sent me regular updates, thanking me for the opportunity, vowing to repay the loan as soon as possible. I started to see him not as Natalie's upgrade, but as a young man trying to find his way, trying to escape the shadow of his past. Life with Lena was good. We traveled, we laughed, we built a solid, loving relationship. I started to believe that I had finally put Natalie behind me, that she was truly just a footnote in my story. Then, one Saturday afternoon, while browsing at a local farmer's market with Lena, I saw her. Natalie! She was working at a small booth, selling handmade jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked tired, worn down, but also different. Softer somehow. Less guarded. Our eyes met. This time, there was no smirk, no defiance, no regret, just a quiet recognition. I nodded politely and started to move on. "Chris, wait," Natalie said, her voice barely a whisper. I stopped. I just wanted to say thank you," she said, avoiding eye contact. "For giving Mark a chance." I stared at her, surprised. "He told you?" She nodded. "He's been working really hard. He's grateful." "He earned it," I said, my voice flat. Natalie took a deep breath. "I know you probably don't want to hear this," she said, finally meeting my gaze. "But I am trying to be a better person. I'm trying to make amends for the things I've done." I didn't say anything. "I know I hurt you, Chris," she continued. "I know I did a lot of damage, and I'm not expecting you to forgive me. I wanted you to know that I'm not that person anymore. I don't know you anymore, Natalie," I said quietly. "And frankly, I don't care to." I turned to leave. "Chris?" Natalie called out again. I stopped, but didn't turn around. "Be happy," she said, her voice cracking. "You deserve it." I walked away, leaving her standing alone at her jewelry booth, the setting sun casting a long, lonely shadow behind her. Driving home, I was silent, lost in thought. "What was that about?" Lena asked gently, squeezing my hand. I hesitated, then told her about the encounter with Natalie, about her awkward apology, about her plea for redemption. Lena listened patiently, without judgment. "Do you believe her?" she asked finally. I shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Does it even matter?" "Maybe it does," Lena said softly. "Maybe it matters to her. And maybe it matters to you too." I thought about Natalie, about her quiet desperation, about the genuine remorse I'd seen in her eyes. Maybe she had changed. Maybe she was trying to be a better person. Or maybe she was just saying what she thought I wanted to hear. Either way, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had moved on. I had built a good life, a happy life, a life that was filled with love and purpose. And Natalie was no longer a threat. She was just a reminder of the mistakes I'd made, the lessons I'd learned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, haunted by Natalie's face, by her words. Finally, I got out of bed and went to the living room. I sat in the dark, staring out the window at the city lights. I thought about the day Natalie had walked out on me, the day she had declared she was upgrading her life. I thought about the anger, the humiliation, the pain that I had felt. And then I thought about everything that had happened since then. The revenge, the success, the new love, the unexpected acts of kindness. I realized that Natalie hadn't destroyed me. She had, in a strange way, liberated me. She had forced me to confront my weaknesses, to redefine my values, to build a life that was truly my own. And for that, I realized I was grateful. Not to Natalie herself, of course, but to the experience, to the journey, to the person I had become. A wave of peace washed over me. I went back to bed, and this time I slept soundly. Years passed. I lost touch with Mark, but I heard through the grapevine that his landscaping business was thriving. He was married, had kids, and was a respected member of the community. I never saw Natalie again, but every now and then, I would think about her quiet apology, about the life she was trying to rebuild, and I would hope, for her sake, that she had found some measure of peace, some measure of happiness. Lena and I were still together, stronger than ever. We had built a beautiful life, filled with love, laughter, and adventure. We talked about marriage, about children, about growing old together. One day, while hiking in the mountains, I stopped to admire the view. The sun was shining, the sky was blue, and the air was crisp and clean. I took a deep breath and smiled. I had come a long way since that awful birthday, since the day Natalie had walked out on me. I had faced my demons, learned from my mistakes, and built a life that was truly my own. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever the future held, I would be ready. The ghost of Upgrade Past had finally been laid to rest. The end.